Yeah, man, sometimes you need some Mahalia Jackson to just clean out all the demons, boy. The first Negro ever made famous by Negroes, Miss Mahalia Jackson. All right, folks. That COVID wasn't the only thing going on in the news this week. Obviously, it never is. Unfortunately, we are at a moment in this country's history where we seem to be trapped in this cycle of violence. And one of the reasons I love talking about it on this show, I talk about it every week, maybe not every week, but a lot of weeks on this program, about us having a young man problem, or a man problem in general. A male problem in this country, because a lot of men are just lost, and it's seemingly a lot of them are looking at violence and extreme acts of violence as the answer. Just this week in St. Louis, we had a mass shooting where 2 people were killed, but others were injured. An armed former student broke into a St. Louis high school Monday morning, warning, "You're all going to die," before fatally shooting a teacher and a teenage girl and wounding 7 other people before the police killed him in an exchange of gunfire. The attack happened just after 9 a.m. at the Central Visual and Performing Arts High School. It forced students to barricade doors and huddle in classroom corners, jump from windows, and hide out of the building to seek safety. One terrorized girl says she was eye to eye with the shooter before his gun apparently jammed and she was able to run out. Oh my God. How terrifying must that have been? You know, how horrific that was. This is a performing arts school, just like the one I went to right down the road there at Emerson. These are kids who are, not to say that it wouldn't be it wouldn't be tragic if it happened at any other school, but these kids are apparently the best and brightest of whatever communities they come from. Their parents sent them to the special school thinking it would get them away from the type of violence that you see at normal schools where kids get shot regularly. That's why my mother forced me to go to Emerson. All my friends from Marquette went to Kennedy King and Wirt. And my mother's like, "Oh, no. No. If you got into Emerson, you going to Emerson." We looked at Emerson as sort of an oasis on some level. From the type of issues that you saw at other non-visual arts and performing arts high schools. The shooter's name was Orlando Harris, who just graduated from the school last year. SAC said the motive was still under investigation, but there's suspicion that there may have been mental illness that he is experiencing. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch identified the dead teacher as Jean Kukza, or Kukza, or Kuzka. I don't know how to pronounce that. It looks Polish or Czech. But her daughter said that her mother was killed when the gunman burst into her classroom and she moved between him and her students. Oh my God. And let me just say this. I know we're going to probably go over a little bit because Juan and Eve went over about 20 minutes over, so I'll probably go about 20 minutes over too, but I've said this before, and, I don't think it's said enough, but I am so appreciative for the teachers I had at Emerson and just teachers in these type of environment, these type of violent communities in general. You know, it's funny. You know, I love my former teacher that's here on every Monday, Miss McCready, Miss Carolyn McCready. She was my teacher in high school, and we used to argue and fight all the time because all I did was fight with my teachers when I was in high school because I really didn't want to be there. Keep it 100. We're going to keep it 100. I didn't really want to be there. But now, looking back, I am so grateful that there are these people in these type of schools, in these violent communities, which Gary was. You know, when I was going to Gary in the 90s, it was the murder capital of America. And a lot of these teachers are coming here. They have college degrees. They could do anything else with their lives that they want. And they choose to come and spend that time trying to educate us, bad kids, in these schools in the middle of the ghetto. Emerson's on 7th in Carolina. Nothing but angry vice lords outside. And all my teachers, Miss McCready, Miss King, Miss Cowan, Mr. Spicer, Mr. Rentel, all these people driving into this extremely violent and dangerous neighborhood in a job that doesn't pay them anywhere near what they should be making or what they could be making, especially back then in the 90s and the early 2000s with a college degree, when a college degree still meant something. And you see stories like this. This is a woman who devoted her life to teaching young people. She could have done anything else with her life and the education that she had, and she chose to work a job where she'd be underappreciated, underpaid, and eventually killed by one of her former students. That is such an American tragedy. It's hard to find the words. The other fatality was a 16-year-old girl who died at the school. You know, imagine being a parent, sending your daughter to school, to perform in art school, thinking she could be the next Beyonce, thinking she could be the next Taylor Swift, or, you know, the next American Idol winner, the next Viola Davis, or Kerry Washington, or whatever. You send her to this special school because you think it's going to be safer than the normal schools, and again, one day she just doesn't come home. That's the absolute reality, unfortunately, for many of the parents in this country. You send your kids to school thinking they're going to be safe, thinking that they're going to be taken care of. Thinking that some semblance of the system has to work. Where if they work hard, if they stay out of trouble, if they focus and hold on to their dreams, that maybe they will make it. They will get an opportunity to get out of St. Louis, out of the hood, and make something of their lives. Man, now this is the thing that's very bizarre to me, because again, this is something that you definitely don't see in most, especially in the black community. They said this young man, Orlando Harris, had nearly a dozen high-capacity magazines of ammunition with him. How often do you see that in the black community? Now, I'm just saying, like, we don't have the hunting culture. We have gangsters here. Like, I could walk outside on 5th Avenue right now and find a drug dealer who got a Glock or something. Okay, I could walk not too far and find somebody got a Uzi or a Tech or whatever. But it is rare for black people in urban areas, people in urban areas in general. This is a rural lifestyle thing right here, where you see somebody who has, you know, dozens of high capacity magazines, 600 bullets this kid had. Like, how does he even get that? Like, we know with the kids who live out in the suburbs or in rural areas, their families are hunters oftentimes. Their families have all these guns in the house. Their fathers are hunters, and their son gets his father's gun and gets his, I think that was the Columbine killers, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, this is the type of thing that you genuinely don't see too much in urban areas. And so this is sort of bizarre for me to look at this story. One thing that frustrated me is that the mainstream corporate liberal media barely covered this story. And look, I know it does not fit narratives. It does not fit narratives. The shooter is black. The victims are black. You know, it was not a racial attack or some hate crime that they can sensationalize and make it about, oh my God, the big scary guy killed a bunch of white people, or the big scary white guy killed a bunch of black people. Like, this was technically an urban shooting, but done in a way that urban shootings really don't happen in most cases. There's very few just random shootings of people who are not gang related, drug related in our communities. Street related in some capacity. That generally does not happen. It's rare. And not only this is the real frustrating part about this case. The relatives of the gunman who killed a student and a teacher at this St. Louis shooting had long been concerned about the mental health of this young man. Again, the mental health, and actually worked with the police to confiscate a gun from him. His mother was heartbroken by the shooting. She said other relatives had long dealt with Harris's mental health issues and even had him committed. This young man had been committed. And he still somehow found a way to have dozen magazines and 600 rounds of ammunition on him. Wow. They even monitored his mail and checked his room to make sure he didn't have a weapon. At one point, they found one, and they worked with the police department to transfer that to an adult who could legally possess one. Wow. Now, they don't know whether it may have been the one that he used in the shooting. Police are working to determine that, and also determine how Harris obtained this weapon. Now, what was the motive? Mr. Harris said he lamented that he had no friends, no family, no girlfriend, and a life of isolation. And his note called it the perfect storm of a mass shooter. This was a self-aware young man who said, I have no friends, no family, no girlfriend, a life of isolation. I am the perfect storm of a mass shooter, and we couldn't do anything to stop this young man as a society. Look, y'all, I don't hide my political viewpoint from anybody. Anybody who's heard me on this station for the last 6 years or so knows that I am a leftist. I consider myself somebody who's a leftist. I don't hide that fact. I'm pro-universal health care, anti-imperialist. I believe in a social safety net for all working class people, for all people in this world. I believe poverty's a sin, and health care and housing is a human right. But I'm going to be real here. Some of these issues that we're having go back to the home. Okay? The government can't overtly solve some of these problems. This is a parenting issue on some levels, a family issue on some levels. And I'm not saying that this kid had bad parents per se. He may not have had bad parents, because if his mother was working with the police to disarm him, if this kid had been committed multiple times, then that means he had a family who cared about him. I don't care what he said. He said he had no family. Who was committing you then? Who was working with the police? Who was monitoring your mail to make sure that you weren't, sending threats to people? So he had a family. But what this society has become over the last, 50 years or so, I'm not 50 yet, but so I'm somewhat taking an educated guess here. What has happened in our society over the past 4 or 5 decades seems to be that we have devalued and degraded family to the point where we have made it almost impossible for people to parent their children in an adequate way. Me and the Rev talked about it a lot when he was still here. Okay? We even talking about with COVID. The government's taking your kids getting COVID shot out of your hands. Our society is making it harder and harder to be adequate parents. First, they sent the jobs overseas. The right-wing capitalists sent the job overseas, destroyed labor unions. So now, fathers don't have stable jobs that allow them to take care of their families while their wives stay at home and watch the kids in many instances. And what we didn't realize, or at least many people didn't realize, is mother is the most important job in society. There is no more important job than mother in the household. And we devalued that job as a society. We devalued parenting in general. Both parents. We devalued fathers too. But we've really devalued mothers. Starting seemingly in the 1970s. You know. And like I said, this isn't a right-wing issue. This isn't a left-wing issue. On the left, you saw a lot of feminists. Women don't need men. Women can raise a kid without a man. All that stuff. You know, that was encouraged. Single-parent homes was encouraged. We started judging women not by their families or their children. We started judging them whether they were competing with men in the labor force. Deeming the work of a mother and wife as either secondary or unimportant. So of course women ain't gonna want to do that. If the job isn't seen as important, if being a wife and mother is demeaning or seen as a form of slavery, of course nobody's going to want to do that. Nobody wants to see themselves put in all this hours of work and only to have it devalued. So now we live in a society where the most important job in society, mother, has been degraded, been downgraded to just sort of a hustle. You saw people like Ronald Reagan talk about welfare queens and Cadillacs. You saw Bill Clinton sign welfare reform in the 90s. Again, presenting this as if women who are poor or whatever are hustling the government, and we got to make them full citizens. You know, we got to make them actually work something. Not understanding that the most important job that they have and had as mothers was making sure that their kids were well adjusted and wouldn't turn into school shooters eventually. Our mothers are the first people to socialize us. Our mothers are our first teachers. Our mothers are our first chefs, our first playmates. Our mothers are our first protectors. And we devalued that job and made it a lot harder to do. We made it easy to cut fathers out of the life of the children. And now we have generations, multiple generations of lost people now, walking around society. This kid was 19 years old. 19 years old, talking about he had no friends, no family. Dude, your life is just getting started. You're only 19. Your life is supposed to suck on some level. But our society has made it impossible to raise kids with any sort of concept of right and wrong or constitution and how to deal with adversity. Those are things you get coming from families. And we've destroyed the American family in this country. And if we don't find some way in the near future to create a world in which Americans are able to create those sort of familial bonds, mother, father, children, have a stable economic and social bond, then I'm sorry, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it, folks. Rest in peace to all those who lost their lives in this mass shooting and all the other ones that seem to be happening weekly in this country. God bless all you parents out there doing the absolute best that you can. All you teachers out there doing the absolute best that you can. My heart goes out to all of you. It really does. I do not envy any of you whatsoever. God bless you.